seek connection, find the source of your tension and address it, physical exertion, and support live music. Pay your shamans.
I'm Bonemeal Baker, or Russ Bledsoe. Most of my deal is making people sweat by manipulating air.
The thing about stigma is that it's a societal lever that puts pressure on the individual in order to fit them into a shape. It's interesting that you mentioned that, though, because the album I'm working on right now dovetails in that very closely. It's called Violent Songs of a Violent People. It's about the effects of addiction, mental illness, rage, and class struggle on poor Southern whites. And it's part of a larger work I have in mind. This is sort of the opening chapter. I was thinking one day about where our infatuation with violence and sort of our collective fascination with anger comes from, and I was thinking of it in the prism of the Old West and our tales of hyper-violent days when people gunned each other down in the streets, as a matter of honor or whatever. And looking into that, most of those people were living under aliases, and most of those people were Southern, ex-Confederate people who had moved west and brought their guns with them. And I thought about who formed those people, and it's this long culture war that's played out between haves and have-nots, and English and French nobility and Celtic peoples for more than 1,000 years now. And once upon a time in England or Scotland, if you had anti-authoritarian leanings, it was cheaper and less trouble than to hang you than to ship you off here. And then at some point someone realized how much money was to be made over here, so they brought the class system with them. So I wanted to examine what makes the Southern poor white appear more violent than others, what the systematized violence versus individualized violence, where the balance of that is, and what are the factors that sort of keep poor people poor, that are placed on them by a class system at large. I know that's a lot. Have you ever asked yourself why we are so attached to guns and the idea of throwing off an imagined oppressor? Does it seem programmed? So I started to think about violence and the things that caused violence. Mental illness and addiction play into the album as limiting or exigent circumstances and factors on the individuals that are the characters of the album. The stigma to mental illness and addiction itself is used as a tool of oppression to deny humanness to class people of a different class or race than yourself. If society stigmatized mental illnesses, and mental illness and addiction are very seemingly culturally very close, or they're co-factors a lot of times in people that are suffering from poverty. I examine the way that's dealt with people that are of a lower societal class, and the way it's dealt with people of a higher societal class. In the time where we've gutted mental health services, right? So at one point in time there were sanitariums, and they were not good places to be, but it was a place where mental health and addiction, all of that was meted out, that even though it's a negative subject, it's a place to touch that releases that subject for you and catalyzes your joyfulness and movement, especially movement, right? Sweating is important at my shows. So Yeah, it's pretty dense subject matter. And if in sweating, excreting is part of it, but don't forget, like the thing that cools you is that it is evaporated from you. Right? You sweat. The sweat doesn't cool you. The act of it evaporating into the air because you've brought it out is what regulates your internal meter. So I apply that sort of a metaphor to what I do musically. It also has a lot of chemical things to do with it. There's a shamanic aspect, whereas I'm sure you've noticed in performance and stage, the communal brain chemistry effect that music can have, and the way it works between yourself and the members on stage and all of the people that are off stage, and then their exchange energetically with you back and forth. It's all brain chemistry. And if everybody is sweating, all these pheromones that are triggering these signals are all coming out. So that's why I like that. I don't know what's going on. I'm having a great time with it. I think every few years I start producing some sort of a pheromone that just garners a lot of like movement and attention. I get very overwhelmed in specific frequency, loudness of restaurant or bar, for instance. And I've just recently, I've been doing this for way more than half my life now, and I've just in the last couple of years been able to feel the neurochemical triggers for like, okay, I need to go out in the alley and sit down for a minute. And feel the trigger like, okay, it's been about X minutes. It's never about time, but like I feel the level equalize, the pressure equalize internally before I'm able to go and give myself to the noise in the crowd again. And like paying attention to that and not forcing myself to stay out or go further off the dock, go further than dock I have. You know what I mean? Giving homage to that and like paying attention to that, and when you need to sit down, when you need to lay down, lay down. It was just noticing sooner when I started feeling bad, when I would get tired. It's a postural muscle sometimes. There's a couple of muscles that if they start fatiguing, I know that I'm past my depth and need to recharge. One of them is postural. It's in the middle of the back, the thing that keeps you from slumping. If I get to where having my shoulders out and this presentation is too much, I realize it's time to get horizontal, and then I go do it. I have a muscle, I think it's an eye muscle, but when it spasms, when it fatigues, and usually it's due to like laughing or anything that causes the eye muscles to flex, it spasms in my inner ear and shrugs up against my eardrum. That is literally a wake-up call. It sounds like wind in a bad microphone. Like it is so unpleasant and unavoidable. And that's when I know I've been smiling too long. I've been laughing too much. These muscles are too tight. And I will literally, if I can't go home, I will go sit in my car and like face flat. And completely make my face dead until it has stopped, because it makes itself, it's in your ear, it's in your head. Yeah. The Stigma, so I think the song I'm going to do it's called Trash, and it deals with stigma, where I recently tagged a part to it at a show where I stuck some words that were to the effect of, to stifle the creative or playful influence in a child is isolating, and to isolation breeds rebellion, and to meet rebellion with derision and further isolation and further oppression creates misery and isolation can't be overcome with self-care. So the song follows a progression of a child who is stifled and then refuted and then discarded, and that is as good a statement on the stigma to mental illness and the stigma to addiction as I can probably make.
So this song speaks to the stigma thing that you were talking about, and it'll be available on the album, Violent Songs of a Violent People. I'm working on that now. I'm tracking it, and I will need to do a GoFundMe or some sort of a crowdsourcing deal to get distribution and packaging done. So my Facebook page, Bonemeal Baker, and bonemealbaker.com, that'll be probably where I'll announce stuff the hardest to get folks. We might start a Patreon, I don't know. It stands out a lot on that album. There's a lot of like blues and gutsy, gritty, swampy, stompy, like rock stuff, but I try to pepper it with little nuggets of more intimate stuff like this. It's called Trash. To a pause early one Christmas day, I stood dancing by the door till they let me out to play. I went out past the old woodshed, but little did I know rusty wires and broken glass hid beneath the snow. And they say, get out the trash, get out the trash, get out the trash, you filthy boy. I'm gonna catch you a crawling rash, never gonna find you a brand new toy. To an angry lad, I never would do right. I never saw a Friday night I could not find a fight. I never met a game, a chance I wouldn't give a world. Was not picky come daylight, find myself a girl. Mama say, get out the trash, get out the trash, get out the trash, you filthy boy. I'm gonna catch you a crawling rash, never gonna find you a brand new toy. A ne'er-do-well, old and broken down, hearth no roof to call my own, refuse of the town. I never cared to make a friend nor any word I like, except whiskey in a mason jar, morphine in a spike. And they say, get out the trash, get out the trash, get out the trash, you ragged man. Only gonna catch you a crawling rash, only gonna lose that arm and hand. Get out the trash, you filthy boy. I'm gonna catch you a crawling